Battlebots, it's here, it's now, it's happening, it's 3 days away. Alright, so, this is the future. This has always been the future since the first robots started doing stuff. I can't believe it didn't have a linear progression since the 90s, but, I mean, I suppose it has in the background, but there's certainly been a terrible dark age, if you like, of no mainstream media coverage of robot fighting. Let me get a little bit into it. I mean, as somebody who I have owned staffies and an American staffy, 2 American staffies now, dogs that were bred for fighting. I know the horrible things that happen to these poor dogs and the reason they exist. The side effect of which is that they have incredible personalities, they're incredibly loyal, and they have virtually no feeling in their damn skin. So you can give them an injection or a microchip, and which is the size of a grain of rice. They just get an injection, like a grain of rice in the back of their neck, and they just go, oh, what? Doesn't matter. Because they just have no nerve endings, apparently, in their skin. However, that's just a fine side effect from a nasty, nasty situation. Which, when you do your research and you look into the history of why there was dogfighting, it was only because they outlawed an even more vile and brutal sport, bear baiting and bull baiting. So when you hear bulldog, or bull terrier later, but initially when it was bulldog, what that was a dog that you'd get 4 or 5 of them in a room, or in a pit, if you like. We'll get to that later too. Into a pit, and you would bring a bull, and you would bet on how long it would take for these dogs to kill this bull, and then eventually, or how many dogs it would take to kill it in general, I suppose. I don't know what they would bet on specifically, but they would bet, people. And they would watch in great joy as these poor living creatures with feelings got torn apart. And it was a spectacle for all, and it was something to do on a Thursday and Friday night, no doubt. Skip to England having some semblance of, animal protection laws, as weak and as no doubt ridiculous as they were, as you'll see. It turned into the idea that, well, we can't do that anymore, it's a bit rough. So they got onto this idea that we'll just let dogs fight each other. And they had dog fighting, they had rat baiting as well, where they'd get dogs and they just tip in hundreds of rats into this little ring and see how many rats it could kill in a certain amount of time. There was one that, unsurprisingly, had one eye. That was the world record holder, and I think obviously still is. I don't think the Guinness gets behind rat baiting world records these days. The point being that this is a tiny taste. As various parts of blood sports have been outlawed, I mean, we've seen fighting dogs happen. That American footballer or basketballer, was it? I forget his name just off the top of my head. You know him. The guy who was, I think he played for Miami, had breeding fighting dogs in his there and then in the 21st century. It was only a couple of years ago. He's since changed his mind, it seems, but this is not a phenomenon confined to the past. This is sadly a big part of humanity. Cockfighting, bull baiting, bear baiting, dog fighting, rat baiting, bloody fighting fish, betting on those. We bet on anything fighting, anything else. Gladiatorial combat, boxing, MMA. How many different types of people just directly combating other people do we bet on? Well, people, and I include, animals as people in that, I suppose, very broadly. Too many is the answer. Now, I have no ideological problem with MMA or boxing whatsoever. If 2 grown men want to beat, or women want to beat the Christ out of each other and get paid for the process, or not paid, or just pay the organisers for the place to do it, good for them. Adults, knock yourselves out, knock each other out. Literally. Go for your lives. But, I mean, in terms of something I'd like to watch, it's often a bit rough. I mean, I'm all for it. They're adults, they know what they're doing. But the more we learn about acquired head injuries, the more we learn about how dangerous it is to get even one concussion, the more... I mean, when I was a kid, I probably got 2 or 3 concussions. I mean, we didn't go to hospital. Just threw up all night. And just woke up in the morning. Just went to bed, got up. Nobody knew anything. It was only the 80s. It just isn't like the 40s. Well, my family didn't anyway. It's like, yeah, you're throwing up after you hit your head. I mean, so what? That's not. Those two couldn't possibly be connected. Off you go to bed. You'll wake up feeling fine. Worst possible advice. Anyway, that was mostly just from motorcycling. Has been my main thing, which where obviously is a separate instance to all of this. But a lot of the injuries I sustained as well. I got knocked out playing rugby league once. It wasn't great. That sort of thing, you know. Knocked out again when I was about 20, riding motorbike. Really, really knocked out. Anyway, a different story for a different day. The more we learn about all of these things, the more we really should be looking at, not banning them, but just going, look, you know, in terms of something to, as a spectator sport, if two men want to do it, two men or women, adults, I mean men, I say it in the, you know, in the classical term, in the same way we say, you know, as man, as, you know, humans. But if two people want to go ahead and beat the hell out of each other, I'm not going to stop them. But I'd rather it, you know, there be something else on pay-per-view that I can support. Not that it not be on pay-per-view, simply that I could choose to watch something like Robot Wars. So, here's the thing. I wrote a Reddit post outlining something very similar to what I'm about to say, because somebody was always, people always get on this whole concept of, why do they hurt the other person's robot? Once they've won, don't destroy the other person's robot. It was their baby. They built this robot. They built this robot from rock and roll. You know, it's just, why did you destroyed it. There was no need for that. You put bits of it all over the arena. Sad. Look, you build a combat robot and you're actually bitching and complaining that it got destroyed by a more powerful combat robot. And not only, I mean, it's rarely the actual owners who you hear doing it. It's people who anthropomorphize the creatures, which is what humans do, which is why this works as a substitute for bear baiting and dog fighting, in my opinion. We anthropomorphize the hell out of these creatures, and people go, oh, don't hurt it, it's gonna get hurt. It's like, no, it's a thing designed to get destroyed for our pleasure, without feelings. Okay? Anyone who puts an object in the ring to be destroyed by the likes of Tombstone, deserves all they get. That's what you've seen. Tombstone. You've seen robot fighting. If you don't expect this, it's on you. But people will anthropomorphize these creatures, so there will be a little bit of back and forth. But the trick is, I think, if we could, not only should these robot matches go to the very end, there should be some sort of blood sack in them as well. Some sort of dye sack. Doesn't have to be red. Just something that lets you know the thing's not happy. The only thing I actually liked about, what was the thing called? Plan X. The idea that it did have the brain thing, which, I mean, that didn't work. It was just like, oh my god, what have you done with yourself? But that it would show how badly it was doing. I like the idea of it, even though it was implemented badly. So, something like a circulatory system that can rupture would be very spectacular to witness. I'm not proposing that we mandate some sort of a bunch of fluids that have to go all around the arena or anything like that. That would be silly. But simply some extra thing to help us anthropomorphize even more deeply. Faces have to be on robots or something like that. It's already, you know, we're already trying, I forget the word for it, but we already find faces in every single thing we view that could be face-like, even the cycloptic ones often, because that's what we do. You know, we're looking for people in crowds, and we're looking for predators in crowds, in crowded scenes that also have faces. You know, wolves have faces, lions have faces, etc. Anyway, we really should be encouraging the hell out of these things to get destroyed. You see a robot get destroyed, it's a proxy for something more vulnerable and with more feeling, as in infinitely more feeling, because things have some, the creatures have some that would have otherwise been harmed. I just think that this is a wonderful way to go. I think that it's like drag racing for angry young men, but for the geekier. This is a great way to stop your Ted Kaczynskis, in a way. I mean, obviously, that's a broad statement, and I'm not going to try and back that up. That's a bit of a jokey statement. But people who don't really feel like there's anywhere to fit in, who are otherwise otherwise quite technical. I think that we could do a lot of youth outreach with this sort of robot war stuff. Not the main competition necessarily, but the smaller stuff. I think that this is a great way to show people that they can build things and actually make things happen in the real world. That's one of the things about engineering, is it makes you see that your ideas can have outcomes in the real world, even if it's only a thing moving up and down. It moved because I said that I was going to build a thing that moved, and now look, it moves. Now there's this thing in the world that does the thing I wanted the thing to do. Wow, I did that. So I think that kind of thing could be a great social initiative, but that's all the side stuff. I think the big one is that this could be a great way to reduce the personal violence on television. I think that the normalization of violence on television is something that it's hard to argue that once a kid's seen several thousand murders simulated as though they are, there's not something going on there. I mean, I don't know that video game violence could be said to do the same thing. In fact, there are studies that says it doesn't. But I don't have my facts together when it comes to simulated violence like that. But I think that even if we call that neutral, this has got to be a hell of a lot better. You know, this carries no negative connotations for anybody, no doubt. Anyway, that said, I think there are many, many things we could use to improve Battlebots. I think that people bitch about the filler. You know, nobody likes the filler. I do appreciate that you've got to have something there to make the thing fill up. I appreciate that a lot of the time crowds need to be revved up. The crowd thing is what let you sell it to the network. You've got to have it like some sort of bastard cousin of wrestling meets MMA meets drag racing meets NASCAR. You know, like, I get where you're coming from. It's all of those things and it's none of those things. It's like indoor motor racing for geeks with like it's this strange everything, and they don't know how to do it really yet, which isn't to say that that's a bad thing. I love what they're doing, but I think that pretty much Farouk Tawhid, if that's Farouk Tawhid, I have nothing personally against the gentleman. I think that as an announcer, he's a great one. I just think a great one, a fine one. I think that concept of having the announcers, and then let's cut to our other announcer who does the exact same thing we've just done. Okay, now back to us for the actual thing. It's like, what just happened? What did that guy just do? He just comes in and gives you a robot fight in time, and then it's the robot with the mostest, and his name is closest. And it's like a weird rhyme thing, and then you cut to it, and it's like all lighting and effects, and it's like, come on, man, just show me the robots smashing the other robots, you know? I'd be happy if it was half an hour a week of robot fighting. But maybe not. Maybe actually an hour with half an hour's filler is better longer term, because it allows them to without renegotiating how long the show is, just add more robots, which is good, I suppose. So this season we could see less filler just by default, by virtue of the fact that they need more time in order to continue to continue to have enough robot time. So if they've got, say, 10 episodes or 8 episodes or whatever it is, if they get a much bigger field, they'll need, more time per episode to simply fit in the actual battles. But they had more robot fights last season than they had time for, and they just skimmed over a bunch, if you recall, which was a little bit disappointing. There was one episode that was just like, hey, here's 1,000 fights that we're just gonna show you bits of, and hey. So that was a bit, bit average. But yeah, so the middle commentator guy, be he Farouk or be he someone else or whatever happens there, I just find it to be an extra piece of wasted time, and I skip through it every time. I've rewatched them many, many times, but I skip every time. Which brings us to the arena itself. Nah, negative. Nay, fail, nah. I dislike the arena a lot. It's silly. why isn't it just concrete? I genuinely don't understand why it's made of steel, which makes it slippery as hell. Why it's made of steel, why it's got saws and shit all through it. Like, I thought the robots were fighting the other robots. Just surviving inside of this arena is something of a challenge sometimes. And I don't understand the point of that either. Just let the robots kill the other robots. And if they don't have an active attack weapon, I don't know, I'd like to see something like, if neither of them finish the other one off, just let the robot fight go as long as it has to. With the caveat that, obviously you can't design these robots to have infinite battery life. So if you want these fights to go forever, there has to be an opt-in of some kind, or let's say a default in. But as soon as you've actually run out of batteries, hands up and we stop. That's not I lose, that's just I'm out of batteries, I can't continue to compete. So we design them to last 3 minutes, and if we get 3.5 minutes or 4 minutes, fantastic for us. But we can't go, oh, well, I'm going to drive really conservatively at the start and not actually do anything just to conserve battery life in case this goes into overtime. No, there's no way to have fun, smash them all to pieces type experience. But you can extend it. And then as soon as someone goes, can't move or can't this or can't that because of battery, then you get the question, was it battery or was it because they just got chopped in half by the other one's weapons? So then you get all, I guess, as soon as they know there's something wrong, they go, oh, my battery's over, I can't move anymore with my battery. So there's plenty of scope to game those rules. But yeah, I would get rid of the arena as a concept. Now, the arena is a dangerous concept for bots in and of itself. So obviously you need somewhere to have the thing. It needs to happen somewhere. But it could be a big asphalt car park with, barriers around the outside of it that way. I don't see the problem with that. I mean, obviously they want it inside. You could have pieces of concrete that you just move season to season if you want to. Build casters right on into the concrete and then have them all strapped together. There's a million ways you could do it. I don't like the steel thing because it's too slippery. That's 99% of the issue here. So I'm sure most of you who will be interested enough to have continued watching up to this point know a little bit about robots or at least RC or something like that, how they steer. Usually it's tank-like, if you're unaware. So in the same way that you would in a tank, you've got one control for the left and one control for the right tread, or in the case of these, usually it's wheels, although some of them have been treaded. Forward on the right, rear on the left, backwards on the left, and you turn to the left. Opposite, you turn to the right. That's fine, as long as you can put traction down onto the ground. What I see again and again is a robot that's going, all right, I can do this thing. And where are they going to practice? It's a big steel sheet. The only places they've been able to practice this are in a big open car park. Or, you know what I mean? Or their big backyard area, or their this, or they've got a friend, or the workshop, or or the warehouse, or any of these types of things which have concrete or asphalt on the ground. And that's it. The idea that you'd just be able to find some steel to practice on, and that's why you see dudes just like coming out, and then they just go, I'm going to turn a little bit to the right, and they just go, and they just spin out. Their bots are virtually uncontrollable, and I believe 90% of that is because of the steel arena, and the impossibility, therefore, of practicing properly on anything that's a similar surface with similar friction. So yeah, there's a lot wrong with that. Also, the idea that you could get just stuck in the hazards. Okay, great. I'm all for the hazards being dangerous. If you must have hazards and it must be steel, have decent hazards, but don't have them that roll inwards in such a way as... There was a bot in that preview. I forget his name. It was in the match for 3 seconds. It was one of the ones with three bots in it. Luckily, because one of them would have been a stupid match otherwise. He just went straight over to the spiral and just stopped underneath it. It was like, I built this whole robot I did this whole thing. I make one tiny little error, and I just get stuck, and I look like the biggest jackass who ever lived. That poor dude. Anyway, we won't worry about that too much. But yeah, I also don't think that that you should be able to be kicked out of the arena. I think that if you want to have hazards, have them internal, have them inboard, but don't have that sort of a situation where, what was the guy with the plumber? I had it written down here somewhere, but I have no idea. When Bronco and the yellow guy, I think it was Bumblebee or something it was called, wasn't it? Anyway, here it is. And he's out. And it's all over for him. That's not much good to us. I think that would have been great as a points win, but the edge of the arena should be such that if you get smashed into the edge, you just fall back into the arena. I don't like this idea of you're out, and there's just dead zones where you can just sit and get kicked out. In that sense, I mean, I know that makes flipper bots only points winners in a way, unless their opponent has been so shoddily engineered that they'll physically break the first time they land on their roof. In which case, I mean, the thing's going to break anyway, no matter what it hits. But I would say that, yeah, if you're going to have a situation where you've got flippers that don't do any actual damage, just modifying the arena to make flippers more of a thing. Have a competition for flippers, then. Have a separate subcategory for just flippers, because that seems silly. If they can't compete, they can't compete. Like, in the same way, there's all sorts of robot designs that nobody sees, certainly not anymore, because they're not competitive. They don't work, and so people stop building them. But yeah, so I wouldn't like to see Bronco go the way of the Dodo, but I'd like to see the evolution to the point where it can flip things so damned high that they can't survive anymore. That you can't engineer a robot to land from 50 feet in the air on any corner and have it just be fine, because that's a whole other task. Now you need all manner of extra isolation and mechanical isolation from electronics and motor controllers and all the rest of it. That makes it a lot of weight that you have to add, and that's batteries and motors and armor you can't have in other areas, and mass in the weapon, etc. So that would be something that's worth looking at. Just flippers so damn huge that you just can't survive the land. That could push evolution, or it could destroy the flippers entirely. Either way, I'd like to see the arena essentially just be flat, earthen, so bitumen, asphalt, bricks, no, not bricks, concrete, that sort of thing, mostly concrete, with then a flat, ideally a circular or a many-sided polyhedron, that we can have a situation where the drivers are just outside these things, and you can get a situation where they're looking through so much perspex to try and actually see their robot, they can't see shit. So I'd like a situation where, no matter where they are, ideally a circle, but I understand the engineering difficulty of actually building a giant perspex circle, so let's call it, a 20-sided dealy. That would be fine. That would be absolutely acceptable in my opinion. And then have those interlocking and put your cameras all around the outside of that. I just don't like the steel thing. Yeah, also, I'm not sure about that Lexan. I know it's 2-inch Lexan or inch Lexan or whatever it is. I don't think they've thought about what's going to happen when two of those horizontal spinners have their blades spinning in such a way as they actually collide, and a piece chips off elastically. Do you know what I mean? It builds up a massive amount of energy and then ping! That thing could have some kinetic energy. It could have some crazy kinetic energy. So yeah, I wouldn't trust that Lexan. I'd have the spectators a little bit further back. But I'm no insurance risk assessor, so what in the hell do I know? But I don't know. I think it's not nearly as bulletproof as people crap on about. There was a Mythbusters episode about it that probably made me think it's just useless, but it's not useless. is not exactly great. It's not exactly bulletproof, let's say it that way, until it's hugely thick. And these things could easily be going at or above the speed of sound, bits of these robots. Bits of something going incredibly quickly that chips off in another direction. Just saying, I know it's usually going to be a glancing blow. Just saying. I wouldn't like to see the competition stopped because some kid in the audience got, I like to say lose an eye, but, got their torso shredded because of a piece of a robot came through. You know what I mean? That's what we're talking about. Like, we're talking about a motor racing level of carnage if one of these robots smashes through. Especially if it's something where the blade is still moving. Also, okay, so off the arena. The arena's, it's a bit of a thing. We could talk about the arena all day. But yeah, into the behind the scenes. Look, just stop it with the, he's an evil guy from so-and-so labs. I don't give a shit. Talk to me about the robot. Talk to me about the insides of the robot. Talk to me about how much current the thing draws. What sort of what alloys were used. How you welded the thing together. Was it water cut? Was it laser cut? Why did you choose a sprocket drive, not a gear drive? Why did you choose this? Why did you choose that? What was the engineering consideration behind this? So the guys from what are their names? The guys with the kitty ear guys from MIT. I forget his name. I was reading his blog the other day. It's fantastic. Anyway, you should check it out. Overhaul? Is it Overhaul? I think it's Overhaul. Yeah. You'll find him anyway. Check out the Battlebots website. You can't miss him. And they were made out to be, the kids from MIT. It's like, as though they were like upstarts or somehow, easily placed as the foil to the older teams. It was like this false rivalry because they were young. Which I didn't appreciate. It's the sort of thing they used to do in Big Brother, and the sort of thing that network television does to manipulate audiences, and I just don't appreciate it. It just doesn't work. It's obvious, it's transparent, and there's no need for it. Anyway, there might be. Maybe it works. Maybe they're already... they make money off of this stuff, so I don't know. But to me, I dislike it. I appreciate there'll be comments about this, possibly. But I do appreciate that these people know what they're doing as well. So this is the geekiest show on earth, and all the behind-the-scenes stuff could be geekier. That's all I'm saying. I know it could be less geeky to some people out there, but we don't shy away from football geekery. How many of these stats and how many of those and how many passes of that kind. And cricket, man, with the graphs. I don't know what baseball's like. Bet they have some statisticians working on baseball commentary teams. But cricket's insane. It's absolutely insane. You go, this is the longest stretch of balls bowled by a left arm over the wicket bowler without a six since 1943, as long as you don't include test matches in the so-and-so series. It's like, Jesus Christ, who noticed that? Anyway, but obviously this hasn't been going long enough to do that. And as such, the sort of stats you can get don't include historical stats. This team has never matched up against that team. This robot's probably never matched up against that robot. We've never seen anything of this design usually matched up, close enough to this design to make it a worthwhile comparison. Come up against anything like that design to make it a worthwhile comparison. Usually. Often there are cases where they have. And as such, I don't think those graphs explaining, the weapon is up here, but the armor's down here. But the maneuverability's up here. Says who? Did you go out and... did you watch them practice on their giant metal slipway that they've managed to construct for themselves to practice with this incredibly uncontrollable, lethal robot before they get into the arena? Or did you somehow, while you were out there filming it, ask them how controllable it was, watch them do it on their concrete driveway and conclude that it's quite maneuverable, and just look at it and go, it looks pretty dangerous, put the weapon right up there. I don't see much of a weapon, I'll put the weapon down. It's like, it's just speculation. So let's not talk about that. Let's talk about the lengths of the flipper and what the pressure is in the pneumatic ram, and how long the total arm is, and versus where the fulcrum and the actual point of attachment is. Let's talk about the pressure in that versus the total force. Let's just bring some STEM to the masses, people. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to fill the entire screen with equations either. I'd love that if you would do that for us and just show us you're working. But not everybody likes that. I do appreciate that. You don't have to do it that way. Just go, based on the pressure that he out of this, now the length of that and the length of that means that the force up here is that, but it's moving this fast. That sort of thing's fine. There's this much current coming through here, and if you have to bring that back to, which is 5 times as much as a normal household uses, fine. It's like running 50 household toasters at once. Okay, say it like that. That kind of comparison, I don't like that, but I get it helps people. Fine, great, but make that comparison in but also put it's 15 kilowatts coming out of these batteries. Make sure you mention kilowatts. Don't just skimp on that just because you've gone 50,000 toasters off 50 toasters. So yeah, I would strongly like to see more actual data about these robots, and as such, yeah, that could be the kind of thing you could show before the match, except for just the completely speculative graphs. In 10 years, hopefully this continues 10 years, 5 or 10 years, we can absolutely start to talk about this is the longest streak of robot fighting that a horizontal spinner hasn't been flipped by a flipper and been detailed. Great, we'll have that. But for now we don't, and for now I think that we can sprinkle in some geek without alienating too many people. Again, I'm not the expert, but this is what I think and what I'd like to see. Old teams do get treated as though they're royalty a bit. There's that the made up rivalry between Overhaul and especially teams like Warhead, stuff like that. I was like, what are you doing, man? Warhead was a terrible robot. I mean, the whole head spinning design, and it can tilt a bit. It's like, what are you doing? But there's no tooth on the actual robot of any significance on the actual spinning part. The first thing you want to think about when you're designing a toothed weapon or toothed anything, the fewer teeth and the deeper they are, the more of something gets taken out per hit. Yeah, so that kind of rivalry. And the idea that you've got to earn your place amongst the new robot fraternity, it's absurdity. The robot does the earning. Okay? If the robot wins, it wins. This is not a club, and it's certainly not a frat house. There's no secret ritual to entry, in my opinion, anyway. Okay, so the outfits. Yeah, I mean, you can't have matching outfits like this. I think they're trying to do the NASCAR thing, but it leads to things like that, like those guys with the, what was it called? Voodoo or whatever? They had the Witch Doctor, that's what it was called. But the crazy Witch Doctor hats and no, you look ridiculous. What are you doing? It's fun when you win in that kind of outfit, but when you lose in that kind of outfit, it's like falling off your motorbike in really brightly coloured leathers. You feel like an asshole. You feel like the biggest prat in town. Because you know what? You are the biggest prat in town. You get dressed up like a idiot to come and get knocked on your ass. That's what just happened. You know what I mean? Right? It's like, imagine what a jackass all those knights felt like when they got dragged off their friggin' horse and had that armor torn off them. It's like, oh, this is just a pain in the ass now. Oh, what am I doing? I thought I was invulnerable. Oh my god, I'm done. So yeah, I don't know. I don't like team uniforms. I think the robot can be a color, and that's fine. But yeah, I know they're trying to sell the thing. They're trying to make it rivalries and trying to make it more like NASCAR. I get it. But yeah, your charity entries. Hopefully there'll be fewer of those this year. I don't know what like Chomp. What are we doing? What were you doing? Like, it's not gonna win, Or what was that one? Counter Revolution. It's not gonna win. It can't win. Or the other one, was that Chomp or no? Radioactive or whatever it was. The big yellow stupid thing. The Tombstone destroyed. There it is. Yeah. It's just like, dude, you're just not gonna win. I don't know. I get that part of it's in order to get into robotics and you get your name out there and you have fun doing it and more power to you. But sometimes you just go, man, what are you doing? It's just gonna cost you a lot of money. I mean, you could have built a different robot that would have a chance of winning. This is not about don't compete. This is about compete properly. If you're gonna get in there and spend 50, 100 grand, because these robots aren't gonna be cheap. You ever thought about how much this shit actually is gonna wind up costing you? As somebody who, when I heard it was on, who, even though I'm currently renting and I don't have a shed, I don't have a welder, I haven't even I've got an angle grinder and a drill, but that's not going to cut it, you know? I do not have a workshop, and the first thing I thought was I must build one. Still, I would like to build one, but then I got to thinking about how much, even excluding one's own time, how much it would actually cost, start to finish, to have built / buy all the equipment necessary to build yourself a robot. And, you know, obviously you'll design it yourself and you do whatnot, but let's say you need a custom sprocket or, a custom this or a custom that. Do you buy the water cutter or the laser cutter? Or do you try and file one out by hand? Or do you send it out to be done? Now, usually you're going to send it out to be done because you're not a crazy person and you want the thing to actually work and you want to be able to have spares and you want the tolerances involved that are actually, acceptable, not rickety old piece of shit tolerances that you can get unless you're a jeweler. But then how long is it going to take to make a sprocket with jeweler's tools in iron? That's just not a thing. So we're sending it out and we're having it done properly. We're buying motors that are incredibly high torque, high current motors. We're buying the latest in lithium polymer batteries. We're having, obviously, you need spares. This idea, I would have little fireproof areas if I could, where if one set of batteries caught on terrible fire, it doesn't catch the whole robot on fire. It doesn't catch any of the rest of the electronics on fire. That you can isolate these things, not with like fireproof doors, just have the things fireproof. Have the cable come out in such a way as when the fire comes out the cable holes, because that's the only hole that is present in the structure. So you've got vent holes, that's fine. Maybe you'd have some sort of situation where the fire itself takes that out of the thing electrically, or you've got a fuse, or you've got some other situation to isolate the thing. So if that fire happens, it doesn't catch all the rest of the batteries and your electronics on fire, and your robot's not fucked. That obviously adds some weight, but I think that level of redundancy, I suppose you'd say, and certainly the capacity to just to turn off whole areas and have it still move some, because it doesn't need to move quickly at the end, it just needs to be able to move. So if it can't move at all, you lose. But if it can move a bit and the other guy can't, you win. It doesn't even need to go to the judges. So I would say that kind of thing would be a big deal. But this idea that once it starts to catch a little fire somewhere, oh well, it's on fire, game's over, she's all over. It's like, guys, you could build little carbon dioxide canisters into the thing and have ductwork built into the thing. I'm just learning SketchUp, so I'm starting to understand just the kinds of possibilities you can have once instead of just like my dad and I used to do when we were building race cars and whatnot, just lay out some steel, think about how wide's the engine we're going to use going to be. All right, and we're this wide, and we want the wheelbase about this, and all right, okay, so, well, it will be this big. All right, and then we'll start putting in details later on, which is a great way to do it if you want something heavy that may or may not work. Thinking about it, it always worked, but there was always some redesign and some jiggery pokery and some, oh shit, I wish I'd made that bigger. Stuff like that. Now I'm understanding more and more that with CAD, you can just basically go, look, well, here's how it's going to work, and we'll build ductwork into the thing so as it works fine anyway. I mean, if you stop, I'm not 100% sure with lithium polymer fire, but if you cool the thing down, I mean, you can have an eject mechanism for the battery packs. You can have a spring-loaded situation where as soon as the temperature got to a certain, temperature, a certain threshold, you could have a a piece of glass or something break and the thing eject out the back. That'd be pretty cool. Just a fireball injecting out the back. I don't know what the rules say about that. I'm pretty sure they say nothing about that. So I'd like to see stuff like that explored more and more. But yeah, in terms of your charity bots, I'd like to see less of that as well. So yeah. What else we got on this list here? Yeah, imperial measurements. Just get metric. It's not going to start until you start it. Just put it also on the screen. It doesn't have to be... You don't have to change your voiceovers. I know you guys want to think in miles per hour, but this is not a live broadcast. It shouldn't be a big deal to chuck a little title over the top of your production. You just go, it spins at 300 miles an hour. Okay, so what's that? 160 times 3? So what? 480 kilometers an hour. Just put that in the bottom. Is this hard? I mean, I can do it pretty readily. Most people cannot do it pretty readily. It's just, you know what I mean? Anyway, metric. Just get with the friggin' program. Like it's you in Liberia and friggin' Myanmar now, I think, isn't it? Come on. I know you guys know what you're doing most of the time. I know that Imperial put man on the moon. So I'm not dissing it. But there is something that's a lot better. Anyway, the horizontal spinners this year. It's probably the last thing I'm going to talk about here. The horizontal spinners this year are friggin' incredible. So I've got their names. I'm sorry if I'm not going to be eyeballing you, but I'm just going to have a quick look here at their actual names and what they are, because they're incredible. So Son of Waiachi is back. Now, I wouldn't call this a horizontal spinner in the traditional sense. It's got a very strange bunch of bracing all over it, like between each of the blades, and there's 3 of them. So, I mean, it could work beautifully. It could be it's going to be a hell of a lot stronger than not having that bracing there, or simply trying to do it up close to the hub. So, and it's rose jointed. It looks like the dude's knows what he's doing when it comes to building things, and he's lost weight since last year too. Have you noticed? I don't know what's going on there. Anyway, so good for him. I'm really looking forward to seeing how Son of Waiachi goes. What have we got? We've got Ultimo Destructo, which is, it looks really terrifying on first glance, because it looks like somehow it looks like a tougher tombstone. Let me put it like that. It looks like a greener, tougher tombstone. However, I have some thoughts. It's square tube, which is not a problem in and of itself. However, it doesn't look to be especially thick-walled square tube. Square tube is not efficient in terms of strength to weight, just because you've got all those corners, you've got more material there than you need. It's easier to weld. No one's disputing that. As someone who's built race cars out of square tube and race cars out of round tube, trust me, it's a lot easier to weld square tube and to cut the corners. So yeah, I would strongly argue that the sprockets and, I mean, the chain tensioner is a great idea on this thing, but why have you got chains on the wheels? I'd like to know what the hell's going on here. Why you've got that tiny little chain driving the main rotor. I hope you've got some sort of a clutch before that, because if not, that doesn't look very good to me. And that's there's no protection for that sprocket itself. I don't like the look of that at all. Just maybe it'll be very strong, but bearing in mind, it will eventually, that spinner will spin up to speed and hit something and essentially stop in something close to 0 time. Obviously not 0, and it won't completely stop either immediately. But it will eventually stop, and it'll do it very close to 0 time, which will send the rest of that damn robot flying at such a rate of knots. I mean, we all saw that with Tombstone last year. There it is. And what happened at the end of that. So, I mean, this type of thing, when something moving that fast, again and again, metal fatigue occurs. If I was doing this, I'd invest in some sort of portable X-ray machine or something. Just bring an extra bunch of blades. Don't let a blade last more than a fight. I know you're going to you let it get hit 10, 20 times per fight. Maybe more. Maybe 1 or 2 if it's a piece of shit. But yeah, after a fight, you need to have it x-rayed. You need to find out what the micro crystalline structure is there. If you have no idea, you have no idea. If you don't know what just happened, what kind of twisting lateral loads, what kind of bending loads, what you can actually put on this object, and then know what it was actually subjected to, which you can't under real world conditions. There's absolutely no way you're going to actually be able to predict that, especially not for a horizontal spinner. Like, this thing's just it's subjected to just forces in every direction, most of which you won't have thought of, and most of which you won't have the spare weight in the bot to be able to truly make it strong. And in that situation, that's one of those dangerous things. To bring back to the arena for a moment, the Lexan around the arena, if one of these horizontal spinners hits another horizontal spinner's blade and a chunk of it goes through there, man, it's going straight through the arena. I do not see one of these things being stopped, a piece of it being stopped by the arena. Anyway, yeah, so I would strongly say this thing's probably not a great challenger. So yeah, that's who are you? We've got heaps more here. Let's just go through the list and give it a really quick one for you. So, Bite Force, Bombshell, Brutus. Yeah, Bronco's back. Obviously good. Captain Shredderator's back. Hopefully it survives the journey this time. I'd like to see what actually happens. And there's one here called Chromefly. Let's have a quick look at that. And Cobalt, which are 2 new competitors. 2 new horizontal spinners. Chromefly by George Matus. I have no idea if that's how you say it. Mattis? I don't know. Salt Lake City. Born and bred. Team Ludicrous. Okay. Anyway, this thing looks like it might not self-right as easily as they think it will. It's not symmetrical on its roll axis, so I'm skeptical that it's going to be much of a threat. Also, I'm not sure how its armor is. It's very difficult to tell from this photo, but that's another one. And again, all of this information on here is fantastic. It's all lovely. I really am excited by all of this information, but tell me what kind of motors it uses. This is exactly what I'm saying. Tell me how much current this motor puts out. How much does the blade weigh? How much current does this motor draw? How much torque does this motor put out? At what RPM? At 0 RPM? Okay, now we're talking. At how many RPM does it maintain? What are we talking about here? There's no way to judge any of this without this information. Then we can start to have a real talk about it. So yeah, it could be a decent robot. No way to know, but I'm not sure about all that. Now, this one here called Cobalt has taken a very different design philosophy, even though it's a horizontal spinner as well. It's symmetrical, it looks like, at least superficially, about its roll axis, so it doesn't need to have a self-righting mechanism. It does not, however. It looks like it could get perched, unlikely but possible that it could get perched up on its bum. Hard to say, it's just hard to say. They're from the UK? Good. Oh, he's got a moustache, got it. Okay, now you look at them, they're from the UK, that's fine. That's no diss, they just look British, that's all. I'm also not convinced, though, about the size of the teeth at the end of the blade. So they're very axe-like, and I can see that getting stuck at best. Well, just as bad, and getting broken off is nearly as bad, I suppose. About the same. Either way, it's going to... If one piece of it gets broken off, it'll be so out of balance it won't be able to do anything. So, again, I'd like to know what... It looks like pneumatic tires on that, though, so that's always a bit of a worry. But otherwise, they look pretty good. I'm really interested to see how they do. They've got a chain as well. Doesn't look very great. I mean, I'd like to see some sort of drive shaft rather than a chain. But chains seem like weight for weight. They do transfer power very well. So it just seems like a weak link. They've got at least the chain covered slightly. Complete control back. Good for you. Creeper Crawley's got smashed to pieces. I'm just going through the list here. Helicopter. Now have a look at that. I don't feel like that's going to be much of a horizontal spinner. It just looks gimmicky. It looks like they're trying to bash things out of the way. But who knows? They might be an entry that surprises all of us. I can't see how it articulates. It looks like it's got multiple points of articulation. It looks like the underbot, if you like, can move as a circle. There's like 4 wheels, 90 degrees apart each. So it looks like you can do that and then just move in directions by dragging one. However, it doesn't look to have any kind of a self-righting mechanism, and it doesn't look like it's in any way. It's more of an ice wave type thing. So hopefully it never gets flipped over. But yep, another one, Space Invader, another one. Again, I don't know about how deep the tool at the end of the thing is. It doesn't seem like it's deep enough. It's a full body spinner, so you can't have a tool that's too big. But I'm not too convinced that full body spinners are going to do that well. And it's not even in the rest of the competition, is it? It got its ass spanked last time, so like in the display. Ice Wave. Yeah, I'm glad to see he's back. Really glad to see Mark back. He's an intrepid young fella. He's probably about the same age as me. I have no idea. I don't know how to judge anymore. I used to be young, and I could see that others were young, and I wouldn't call anyone a young fella. I just think that they were an old dude. And then I got to be, in my 30s, and now I go, whoa, that dude's really young. That young dude. Then other times I go, whoa, that young guy. And I'm like, whoa, I'm 15 years older than that guy now. It's like, Jesus Christ. So there's this whole thing anyway. Meanwhile, back to the robots. So Ice Wave, I'd really like to see Ice Wave do well this year. See how we go. Lockjaw's back. Hey, Lockjaw! I didn't do well against the guys from MIT last year. Mobius is a full body spinner. Looks like it's being run by some sort of queer reenactment goth band with a giant wrench. Oh, they're a bit steampunky. Okay, are they steampunky or are they druids? I don't know if they're alien druids or if they're a punk band. But either way, we'll see how their robot goes. Full body spinner. Nightmare's back. Look, it doesn't write itself. I don't know what you brought it back for. Again, it's one of those types of bots where you just go, why do you keep building bots like this? What is your thought pattern here? It won't self-write. It'll just get stuck on its ass like a shit turtle. Where do we all get any enjoyment watching a robot flounder on its ass? Okay, here's one I do want to talk about. But we will get back to that after I double check that there aren't any more horizontal spinners, because we're on that. I know we've got the Ringmaster, full body spinner. I think that got put out, didn't it? I think that one's already out. So yeah, but either way, it's symmetrical, but it could be interesting. There's the Rotator. Now, it's got 2 horizontal spinners. I don't know if they're opposed or if they spin in the same direction. I would imagine they'd be opposed, otherwise the thing's going to have a gyroscopic nightmare on its hands. It looks like if it gets spun or like flipped, it doesn't really matter. It looks like it doesn't have a back to worry about. I don't know if there's a direct drive off of motors. It looks like they're direct drive and there's no actual chains or sprockets to worry about. I think Rotator could be very interesting. It's got incredibly low clearance, so it might get under some of these bots that think they're very clever by being able to get under spinners. And this design where it's sort of best of both worlds, but obviously that means they've lost a lot of mass out of the actual spinner itself. So it's obviously a design compromise. They can't have the armor they want. They can't have the motors or the batteries they want, and they certainly won't have the chassis they want. That's if they do get much energy out of this thing, which I hope they do. I really want to see this do well. Don't get me wrong. I love to see these things do well, but I'm not confident that there hasn't had to be a corner cut somewhere in order to get 2 of them into the same robot. It's such a good if this works. This could be the next paradigm in robot design, like 2 horizontal spinners built in such a way as that you just go, boom, no worries. Very hard to beat, I think. But it does have that big weak spot up on the side where the wheels are, but it's hard to avoid that unless you want to build it, to have 4, in which case you've got another question all again. But either way. That's another horizontally, and son of which Archie, and well, we do need to talk about Tombstone himself, herself, itself, himself. One more time for the slowies. Now, Tombstone did not win. We all know Tombstone did not win, sadly. But it's the most fearsome bot. Let's put it like that. It's not necessarily the best competitor. I don't know if... I mean, it's the sort of thing that if you've got a skilled driver with decent armor up the front, it's going to destroy itself. Exactly like what we saw with Witch Doctor. The only reason it won and Witch Doctor didn't was because it could move at the end. Again, it was lucky to beat Witch Doctor because that armor was thick enough that it just couldn't get through it. It just deflected the energy downwards and it went upwards. You know what I mean? Like that, as soon as it hit that angle, it just went ping, and it was just all over. Tombstone went everywhere. But again, so addressing those issues, I'd like to see Tombstone change out the blade, or Ray, the operator, owner, designer. I'd like to see him change out the blade. I know this is probably such an expensive proposition after every match, and then have them X-rayed, and you're going to have 10 blades. You're going to have 10. Or 8. Or whatever you project the number of fights you'll do is. Treat them like tires in F1. They're expendable. You know what I mean? Like, well, not anymore. You can't treat tires like that. I think they've got a bunch of rules about tires in F1. I don't follow F1, so excuse my lack of knowledge. But yeah, I would like to see him do a couple of bits and pieces like that to just get even more competitive. But the the one we actually want to talk about here, which I don't think will win. I wish it would, but I'm not that optimistic. Built by Rob Knight, it is called Obwalden Overlord. Obwalden. I don't know. Where are they from? Oh, they're from France. So, okay. It's about the control mechanism, this one. So I'm really excited. I mean, the robot itself, I'm not sure what their thought is. It sort of looks like, what was that one from Days of Yore? That giant house robot, Sekil-A-Lot. Yeah. It kind of reminds me of Sekil-A-Lot just because it's like upright and it's got arms. But those arms, which may have some kind of fire, let's have a look if it's got any information on that. Nope. Maybe it's just a hammer. It says hammer. But either way, two of the dudes, control is such a massive factor in this. Two of the dudes have this arm gear that straps onto their chest. You can see it in the photo here. This arm gear that straps onto their chest, that as they move, they control each arm of the robot. It's brilliant. Whether or not this guy wins, which, as I said, I think the robot itself is too delicate. The way the bits of wire and, etc., the string almost, which are being used as, tendons, if you like, it's too delicate for this kind of competition. But the gentleman has almost certainly secured himself a very good long-term career in robotics just by designing this thing. It's amazing. It's an incredible thing. So I can't wait to see it work. I just can't wait to see these things go from photographs to actually working creatures. This is such an exciting time when you see all the new robots. I've never seen them move. So yeah, I'm very interested in these guys, these new entries like this. I think that a lot of the others can be Overhaul. I've been reading the blog about Overhaul, as I said, and hopefully this new guy. They've addressed a lot of the issues, so I think they'll be very difficult to beat this year. That pincer is quick and it's powerful. Read the blog to find out how. I'm very, very excited for this year's competition, guys. I hope you are too. By the time I get this thing up, there'll be just 2 days until robots. I intend to do this thing weekly, so next week I'll see you again. Well, in a few days, in probably 3 days, I'll see you again for my wrap-up of the first official matches of the second season of Battlebots. So, until then, adieu. and keep on speaking freely. Thanks, guys.